Let's remember, of course, he's being dismissed during a naval blockade of the Iranian coastline. And an update on that right now, President Trump on Truth Social just a couple of moments ago reiterates that he has ordered the United States Navy to shoot and kill any boat, including small boats, who are trying to stop vehicles from crossing the Strait of Hormuz, and in particular for putting mines in those waters. He says, quote, there is to be no hesitation. Also, he says he's authorizing the U.S. minesweepers to triple their efforts to clear those waters. But we know this. First of all, the U.S. has far fewer minesweepers than other navies in the world. And the Pentagon just yesterday briefed Congress that it could take up to 6 months after the war ends to fully clear the Strait of Hormuz. And we have no idea when the war is going to end. So we're looking at a lengthy time period, which means that economic ramifications are going to continue for quite some time. All right, joining us now for more, MS Now international reporter Inez de la Cuetara, live from Paris. MS Now contributor Inzamam Rashid, who joins us live from Dubai, and the co-host of The Weekend and a Washington reporter for MS Now, Jackie Alemany. Jackie joins us live from the White House and just moments ago got off the phone with President Trump. So, Jackie, what did the president tell you?
Yeah, John, the president called me quickly to give me an update of the status of whether or not in-person negotiations are going to resume. Obviously, at the beginning of the week, we all thought that was the case. J.D. Vance, Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner were supposed to head to Islamabad to continue the second round of negotiations. Those were called off. The president told me that right now what they're essentially doing is giving the Iranians time to figure out who exactly is negotiating. In the first round of negotiations, Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister, was involved in them, along with the speaker of the Iranian parliament, who sort of have disparate views. But Araghchi is generally viewed by U.S. officials as someone who's more amenable to negotiating with the U.S. and someone who's a little less of a hardliner, more reasonable, as one White House official previously told me. But the issue is that Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, the original Ayatollah's son, is still the person who is running the show. He's essentially viewing himself as, the New York Times phrased it this morning, the board of directors. So everything that is happening in Islamabad has to eventually go back through him. And this fracture with the Iranian government and the ruling class right now between whether or not they are going to continue to try to stand firm against the U.S. and refuse to negotiate, or eventually concede to some of the concessions that the president would like them to make. He has said basically that the president has said that there's no time pressure on when they can hold the next round of negotiations. This unilateral ceasefire that he called for is essentially indefinite. The U.S. blockade remains, although there are Iranian officials who have said that they believe if the blockade ends, then that would allow Iranians to come to the table again to resume negotiations. But all of this is really hour by hour here as the Iranians try to figure out again who has the power to make the calls here on these maximalist demands that the president is continuing to insist on.
So, Jackie, just got off the phone again with President Trump. If he's saying that there's no, quote, time pressure to have these negotiations, he seems to indicate that the ceasefire, doesn't have an expiration date. There had been some reporting in the last couple of days that if Iran wasn't going to come to the table in, say, 72, 96 hours, that maybe he would start attacks again. So tell us, please, if he addressed that. But also, if this is just going to extend indefinitely, did the president give any suggestion that he's aware of the economic pain that's going to deliver?
That was not a part of our conversation. It was very brief because I had made it clear I was about to get on air. But he did post on Truth Social shortly before he called me that he had ordered the U.S. Navy to shoot and kill any boats, small boats, though they may all be them, at the bottom of the sea that is putting mines in the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. He also continued that the U.S. Navy is continuing to clear those mines. And so I think that truth, obviously, is sort of the messaging that we've seen from this administration consistently. The idea that all options are still on the table, including military force, while continuing to try to wait for Iran to negotiate. There seems to be a reticence, obviously, when you're looking at the tone shift between what's coming out of the White House, especially from last week compared to this week. Last week, threatening the entire Iranian civilization and potentially leveling attacks on civilian infrastructure in Iran, versus the tone that is coming out from the president this week to try to be patient and to wait for negotiations to happen, because all of this is, as you note, happening against the backdrop of what people are calling the world's biggest national security threat when it comes to the energy crisis that's happening right now. Record high gas prices for the president here, and an approval rating and a rating on his handling of the economy at an all-time low when you're looking at both of his administrations, the first and the second.
Jackie, stay with us and keep an eye on your phone in case the president calls back.